So this chuck was bought a couple years ago. I bought two chucks at the same time, and they're both 6-inch chucks. And the other one is a forged chuck, so I can spin it at the full RPM on my lathe. This one right here is cast iron, so I can't turn it right wide open. This one, despite this one looking worse, it's in better shape. The other chuck I have is just about worn out, but I basically just use it for soft jaws, and so it suits me to use just bore whatever I need to as I go, and that way I tend to turn a lot of small things so I can run the RPM way up without worrying about anything. So all the marking and discoloration on this is because someone probably left it wet and put it back in storage, and so there was a good bit of, it looked like the kind of rust that would be from old coolant, just kind of seeped in a few places. You can see the staining here, so there was like pretty easy rust cake, I guess you could say. It just kind of scraped off, but it left the staining, so you can't feel any of that at all, but you know, it just leaves a mark, so it's unsightly. These bores right here aren't precision bores anyway, they just kind of hold the pinions, and so they're kind of ugly to begin with. The back of it, the only thing I really did was just stone down any pock marks that were on here, and still has all the factory grind marks on there. And this right here, you can see that's just pitting from rust. And then there's the board that the center of the scroll rides on. It's in really good shape, no wear at all. And then this outside section, there's another ground surface. There's no wear on it. Any spot you see that's dark is just where rust was, and it was cleaned up gently with some brass brushes and razor blades. So everything's in pretty good shape. That surface down in there, you know, still has, you know, a lot of good life left in it. No problems. So here's the scroll. We'll look at the back of it first. And so if I can keep this camera focusing, there's the bore of the scroll. It's in real good shape, original grind marks intact. That was a chunk of rust that had flaked off. A little bit on the scroll right there. You can't really feel it. But I'll try to show any sort of wear. You can kind of see a very slight haze on there, and that's kind of about it as far as wear and tear on the scroll itself, and that's pretty continuous the whole way. You can see right there, there's nothing I can catch a fingernail on, so we're talking, you know, just basic run-in wear, use, where the micro surface of the original grind just gets rubbed a little bit and polished. Alright, this may not be the greatest setup in the world, but got a metric test dial indicator, and it's showing 0.005 millimeters of clearance, so that's roughly 2/10, and it's very similar for all three jaws. Here's the same jaw. I'm torquing it back in the up and down direction, and can't really detect any movement. Whatever clearance it has is pretty minimal, just enough for it to slide in. So here's the top jaws, and that's, as far as I know, original factory finish on there. The very front teeth have a little bit of wear on it. All the rest of them are in pretty good condition. On the other end, kind of a similar story, except this jaw down here, it's got a ding on that outer tooth, and there's something embedded in that jaw. It hasn't gotten in my way yet, but might be something you have to either knock out or file off. I don't know if it's an embedded piece of carbide or high-speed steel or what. And here's the teeth on the bottom jaws, and you can see they're in pretty good shape. Pretty minor wear on those. And as far as on the side, you can still see the original machining marks. A little bit of run-in wear, but no real grooves. So they're in pretty good shape. They're all pretty similar. That one, this probably has the most wear out of any of them. and it's just starting to take off the factory grind marks. I can't really feel anything, so there's, you know, minimal wear, if any. I'll just look at, here's where the scroll contacts. I'll try to line up the light just right, so you can see, you know, there's some marks where the scroll contacts, and you'd expect that because it's a pure friction sliding surface with a lot of force on it. But nothing that would be abnormal or indicate that the chuck's worn out. And here's the little pinions, and these are a pretty high load item, and the finish on here is real rough from the factory. It lets it run in and establish its wear pattern and everything. But just looks like normal wear, and it wouldn't really matter how much these wore as long as I could still grab the pinion, as long as I could still grab the ring. These are some thrust washers that go with the pinions, and they're in pretty good shape. There's probably, like, you know, I can barely feel that with my fingernail. This is a really high load item, so it wouldn't be uncommon to have a little wear on that, but I mean, considering how thick it is, you got a lifetime ahead of you before that wears out. And these right here are little insert, I guess, kind of journals, and you can see the marks. That's just where that little rim right there rides in there. There's no kind of ridge. It's just basically where the rust was allowed to build up, and then kind of everything else kept clean, but I can't feel anything in there. All of these are numbered and easy to reassemble, so there's factory punch marks on all of them. So there's a 3, and you just find the jaw that says 3, right, that number right there. That number 1 is part of the model of the chuck. It's a 6312. The number on the end there is actually the jaw number. So I'll grab another one you can see. So that one's got the full model number in the middle, and then there's a 2 on the outside. Pretty easy to put back together. The 2 halves of the body index together with a dowel, so there's no screwing that up. And other than that, it's pretty easy to bolt together. When I put this together, I'll lube it with some oil, probably some Vactor 2, and then that way, if anybody wants to change their lubrication, you know, it'd be easy to take apart and just rinse it off and put whatever you want to in there. So I'm going to put this chuck back together, and I'll put it on my lathe, and we'll see what the total runout is. And I'm slinging all the excess oil out, and then we'll chuck up something straight in there and see what happens. Here I am chucked up on a 1.25" reamer, just on the ground surface over here. This is probably the straightest thing I got that's a decent size. It looks like we're hitting about 0.04 millimeters. So that times 25.4, that's about 1/1000th of an inch runout on this chuck. So I think that's pretty good.